You should take advice from a lot of places, maybe from a lot of people who know the space, know what they're into, but you shouldn't take every piece of advice as to like, this is concrete what you have to do. Throughout the history of sour strips, there's probably a ton of decisions that I made that people with a whole lot of experience would have been like, I would have never done that. I would have never done that. But every decision led me to this moment in time. And I think you have to just trust your gut more than you think. But I think at the end of the day, a lot of sour strips was built, and the successes were built on decisions that I made of just, I think we should do this. Like, I think this is the move. It wasn't about what does it cost? What is the profit of this gonna be? What is the ROI on this? It was like, I think either whether this would be cool or this is something that I really want to do, or I think this will work. And I think the more and more you trust your gut, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Welcome back to another episode of Chew on This. Today's a really special one because we get to bring back somebody, which we rarely do. Actually, it might be the first time we're doing this, but we get to bring back Maxx Chewning, who I know you guys know because we've had an incredible first episode where we talked about Max building not just his personal brand, but also sour strips. And in a quick, short time, we couldn't even finish a whole season, and you've sold the company. Yeah, acquired by Hershey. So we're actually here to break that down. Max has been super gracious with his time to be able to talk about all things about the acquisition, what led up to it, what after acquisition feels like. But before that, Max, give us a little bit of just breakdown of what the hell transpired from like when you were here. You're just talking about, hey, this year we're gonna have a large year, we're growing and scaling, and then next thing you know, you said it happened really fast.
When did we film? Was it 2 years ago?
I think it was like a year and a half.
Like a year, yeah.
I mean, which goes to show you like so much can happen in like such just like short period of time. But I mean, the acquisition was something that a lot of people. It's probably like what I mentioned in the last episode, whereas like when I started the brand, I never like thought about selling the company. It's more like, oh, like maybe this would happen, but I would get asked by everyone of like, would you ever sell a company? Would you ever sell a company? And then I guess in like my space, like I didn't even like process that selling the company was something that people like start companies and they like want to like aspire to have this sale. It was more like I'm having fun doing it. I like doing it. I like candy a lot. So it was just like fun the entire way. So then when this opportunity came up to sell it, that's when I had to kind of like really think at that moment in time of like, is this something that I want to do? And I kind of weighed all the pros and cons, and the pros outweighed the cons, and it's been a wild year. I mean, 2024 just in general, in terms of getting married, selling the company.
Wow.
Got another dog, found out that we're having a child. So I mean,
building a house.
Got the new land. So I mean, it was like this. I guess we didn't get the dog till January. So, but yeah, like so much happened in 2024. Like, and it all was like the last quarter. Q4 was wild, wild Q4.
Yeah, that must be an understatement. So I'm really curious on. There must have been a moment where something happened and you're like, okay, I got to consider this, right? And whether it's like an email or a conversation that was maybe just a thought that turned into like, hey, this is actually something that could happen now. Give us that first moment. What was that where you're like, okay, this is potentially happening now? Where is that switch happen? Because a lot of things stay in imaginary land.
Yeah.
And then you have oh wow, I got it.
Well, so I actually had like some conversations with Hershey's like over the years, but they didn't really like go anywhere. It wasn't this like, hey, if you hit these target numbers, these metrics, we could really be interested. It was just like a friendly, like which I assumed these bigger brands were like seeing what we were doing. I was kind of thinking like, hey, when we get the sales data from Target, and I can see all the sales of all the other brands, like I know that all the other brands are seeing the same thing. And I was getting this high off of like whether it be taking shelf space or knowing that I'm above these brands that I've been eating for years. And it wasn't this like pompous thing, but it was just like a cool feeling. Yeah. Like it's like I'm just a dude who likes candy, and now we're specifically in Target, like we're selling more of the candy that we came up with, with this brand. And so it was a super surreal moment. And so I guess they kept kind of like just have warm conversations with me over the years. Like I'd like one call a year. I'd be like just, hey, we like what you're doing. Just like what are some pain point? Like it was just like a really quick conversation. Yeah. And I didn't really understand like what it went from. It wasn't like, hey, we'll talk in 1 year, we'll talk in 6 months. It was just like, yeah, that's cool. Really like what you're doing. If you ever need anything, let us know, kind of thing. I was like, okay, back to work. So it was I never really like crossed to mind. It was always like I've had conversations with them, but nothing. It didn't come from anything. So I didn't want to get like caught up in the what ifs and keep like thinking like, oh, it's gonna happen. I'm gonna reach out, and when they call, I answer the phone, and then when it was over, I'd get back to work and just continue on, and then just had a connection over the years, I guess. And then it was September of like last year. I got a call again, and I was like, oh, here we go. Another yearly call, I guess. And just kind of checking in, the same thing. And they were like, hey, we're going to be, we'd love to like chat in person. Like, can we come down to Houston? I was like, oh, I'm actually going to be in New York next week. This is last September. I was coming up for, my wife was walking in New York Fashion Week, and we were doing a Sour Strips event. It was my birthday week. So I was like, oh, I'm going to be in New York. And they're like, even better, we're close by. So I had a lunch with them, and it was like that. It was kind of the same thing at the lunch. Like, how are things going? Yeah, we see, we see what you're doing. We like what you're doing, kind of thing. Yeah. And then after the lunch, I even went back to the hotel and to my wife, and she's like, well, how was it? I was like, I don't really know what happened. Like, I don't really know. It's not like, they're not like, here's the offer at the lunch. Like, also, we'll take another loaf of bread. It's
sign it.
Yeah. So I was like, I think they might want to like keep talking after this point. So they were like, yeah, we'll reach out over email. And then starting that Friday, so the call was on like a Wednesday, and then starting that Friday was essentially the start, which I didn't know at the time was the starting of the due diligence process. It was just like, hey, we're going to send over some questions, like find out some more about the company. And then from that moment on, it took 2 months to close the deal, which I've learned is like a record-breaking time frame. It usually takes 6 months, a year. But with Sour Strips, I guess without me knowing it, is it was a good thing if you're ever looking for an acquisition that your team is like really small, and you don't have any debt, and you don't have maybe it's not complicated with the ownership, right? Or in my case, owned 100%, no debt, profitable company, super small team, didn't have a ton of contracts, like with a whole bunch of different people that I, maybe without knowing, like signed throughout the years, because I was really hesitant to even just sign any contracts. Yeah. So I was able to like do a lot of even our like distributor deals just with like, I'd rather let's just handshake and let's just like work together type of thing. And so that, I guess that was to my benefit. Awesome. And then it was just that 2 month period of the due diligence. I'd like heard a lot of people talk about their experiences with like selling a company, and how like it's like so much calls and it's so much hard work, and you'll be out at this place and they call and you need to go like step away. And it was exactly like everything I experienced, or everything I heard. It was like the most intensive project that I've ever done, outside of like the first like year of starting Sour Strips, where that was like, I don't know what I'm doing. It felt like I was back in school almost, because they give you this like Excel spreadsheet with like hundreds of questions that like you should know the answer to, but I'm kind of doing them out of order. I'm like, no, don't know that one, skip that one. Okay, yeah, I can do that one. I'll come back to this one.
Ton of procrastinating.
Yeah, exactly. And then it just like progressed over the 2 months, and then it closed on the 18th of November, and so I guess from September 11th to like November 18th was like the time frame. And I've heard of a lot of deals like closing or not closing like right before the finish line kind of thing, like a falling through. And I was it's everything like pointed to like, this is going to happen. Like this is going to happen. And then it was like the closing call. It was like, all right, everyone's lawyers on the call. Like, you're good. I'm good. All right. Wire sending out. We'll post on social media later today. Like, and it was like, okay. So wild.
I'm so curious. In the 2 months, you have Ferrero, you have Mondelez, you have Mars Wrigley, and then you have Hershey's. Mm-hmm. Did you even talk to anyone else? Did you care to talk to anyone else?
Whenever I would get asked about selling the company, like my first thoughts was first like, hey, we're profitable. I'm making money and I'm really enjoying it. Like, I don't really need, and we're like growing so fast, right? So it wasn't this like desire. It wasn't like I need to sell because of like cash flow, or I need to sell because I'm like hating doing this. It was like I'm doing candy, man. Like this is like my dream. And we were just I didn't even have time to think about it because we were just growing so fast. Like it was just new accounts, and we get an account and then we do really well. And then by the time we can like manage them, I'm trying to figure out the supply chain of how we can keep up with them. And then by the time you're like halfway done with them, you are, you already have another account reaching out. And then it was like this snowball. So I never had time to like think about it. I got approached a couple times. They probably like maybe like cold emails of, hey, we're a private equity firm. Like, we'd love to invest in the company. And I was like, I don't need the money. And I also don't want, I never wanted like a PE company to buy the brand, because I always said my goal with Sour Strips was to create this brand that would like last forever, this like legacy brand. And I wanted to change my life and change people around me's lives. And I also wanted to just like prove that I could change an industry that like I, as a kid up until as an adult, like grew up obsessed about, right? So it's just this cool feeling. So I had no interest to sell it to a company that was just going to use it for cash flow. I mean, I guess that's what all businesses do, but I was like, I wanted a candy company. If that would be where the conversation was, because I knew at some point, like, yeah, we're growing like a weed. Yeah, we're growing, we're scaling crazy. But I knew at some point, like, I'm only gonna be able to go so far before like a lot of like really beneficial resources from outside companies would really help take the company to the next level. So I knew that like a strategic buyer was something that I would be open to the conversation of, whereas the other ones I would just ignore the emails. So I never talked to anyone else. And with Hershey, I was really excited about Hershey being the one that ended up buying it and even just contacting us, because from my perspective, I looked at a lot of other big conglomerates as to like, okay, hey, we would fit in a lot of their portfolios because they're in gummy, they're in sour, right? And we would fit well with them as another one of help them like take over. But with Hershey, I was like, well, let me look. Like they're the kings of chocolate, like, right? Like they dominate the chocolate with Reese and all these things. I was like, but they're on their gummy and sour side, they have Jolly Rancher and they have Twizzlers, right? So they don't really have like a predominant like sour specific. They have a lot of that done of extensions. So I was like, I feel like if Hershey's interested in us, that means they want to really get into the sour kind of world specifically, right? And if we're that kind of like vessel for them to put all their power into, then that means they're going to want to go against all the other big brands. And if that's the case, then they're really going to want to pour the gasoline on this brand to compete with these others, right? Because if they're going to get into the sour space specifically, then they don't want to look foolish, right? Yeah. So they're going to make sure it's successful. I was like, I feel like it's this perfect fit of this this monster company who is, for generations done these like incredible things, but now it's like, hey, here's a new age brand specifically in the sour category, and you can go against the other like large brands. So I just thought it was like the perfect fit. Like I really did.
That's incredible. I love that. I'm very curious how the deal is structured, where I would imagine you would still want to be somewhat involved just because this is your your brainchild, and obviously you're doing content and things like that. Talk through what that post sale involvement looks like, because I'm sure there's brand owners that are like, you know what, I want to just I want to sell this and be done with it. And then there's some that are like, well, I still want to have some say in what the future of the brand looks like.
I would ask like people if they were ever like, hey, I want to sell the company, get a payout, and like walk away. I'd almost, in my mind, that would either tell me that the person is so stressed out about the brand that they're, it's a consuming their life, or they're maybe started it with their only goal in the company is to have this exit, right? And I feel like, well, that's not a bad thing to have. I think you should just be passionate about like the products and the services that you're providing. And for me, it was like candy, and I've talked about this a lot, of like candy was this like, it is this like just obsession for me, right? It wasn't this, I saw a gap in the market, I saw this opportunity, I analyzed this space and realized no innovation has happened in this, it wasn't any of that. It was like, I love candy. I think I can make a cool candy brand because I can do everything that I would want as a candy lover, and I can just build a brand around what I would want, because I know if I would really like these things, everyone else who likes sour candy will probably like these as well, because I'm one of them, right? So I think the idea of like just exiting the company and walking away would be kind of honestly surreal. I feel like you'd be like, what do I do? Yeah. So I really wanted to continue to be involved with the brand. And after you sell, especially with a company that's like smaller and like, I didn't have everything structured the way that I should have. My team is super small. There's like 4 or 5 of us that are doing the big behind the scenes kind of operations, and then there's a lot of team leads and managers and more in like the warehouse side of the team. But of like pulling the big levers of like decisions is myself and two, 3 other people. Because of that, it was you can't really. It wasn't like set up in a way that someone could just like walk in and then just like take it as is and run with it, because it's so like I'm wearing 50 different hats in the company. You know, the other 2 people are also wearing 20 hats in the company. So it'd be, you know, it's kind of like, hey, who does this? Like, oh, I do that. Well, why don't you have this person? Like, well, because I can just knock it out in 30 minutes. Like, why am I going to pay someone like cost me that much money? And I'd rather just not, you know, do all that. So, you know, they have to like learn. They knew the success of the brand, but they needed to understand the like the dynamics of like how we build it. And Sour Strips is like a really unique brand in terms, I mean, look at the candy space and the social. It's been the same way there's a reason why Sour Strips was successful. There's a lot of reasons, but one of them is because like the space has just been the same for so long that no one's kind of, hey, let's do this new age, let's focus on social media, let's be kind of edgy. Like no one's kind of done that until we came in the space, right? So because of that, we do things really uniquely. So you can't just plug the same systems that have been working for generations on the business side. It's like, hey, if we want to keep Sour Strips like authentic to what the brand is, which is why it's so successful, then we need to make sure that we don't screw that up. So Hershey was gracious to be like, hey, you know, we want you to continue to like lead the brand. We want to take off all the things that, you know, maybe you don't enjoy. It's almost like, it's kind of like what I've told my employees for like a long time is that, you know, every time I'm like, hey, if you ever feel like you hate doing the thing you're doing or you get overwhelmed, like, you tell me what you don't want to do, and I'll take it off your plate. Like I'll find you. I want you to work on what you're passionate about. I want you to work on what you enjoy as much as you can at a job, right? That's how, you know, delegation happens, and other people can level up. And so that's kind of what Hershey was like. Was, you know, hey, you clearly love brand direction. What I want to do is continue to like keep the authenticity of the brand and the cool factor, and so they want me to continue to stay on for the foreseeable future to keep like leading the brand. And I'm like happy to do it as well, because there's so many, like, yeah, we created this cool brand and we have these, you know, 12, 13 flavors and a couple extensions, but, you know, in the vault of my brain, I had like the next like 5 years of things that I wanted to do, but I could never do because, you know, I don't have maybe the resources, or it didn't make sense to like, you know, deviate from the main brand to do this other sour candy brand that I also, now I see that like, oh, there's room to like improve in this category in the candy space. But I was like, I'll get to that eventually. So now it's like, they're kind of like, hey, you tell us like what dreams you have and we can, you know, help, you know, make it come true. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds, because I created this brand that changed, it really impacted the industry, was able to sell it to a company that wants to take this specific category of sour and gummy and go against their other mammoth competitor. So I know they're going to put fuel in the fire. It solidifies this brand so that, you know, hopefully forever, you know, Sour Strips are going to be in every single store for generations, which is great. And I'll be really proud that I did that. I was financially able to secure, you know, myself and my family for, you know, the foreseeable future. I was able to take chips off the table of like risk, and I'm able to stay on and continue doing what I love and getting paid for it. So it's like, you know, so it's like, it's kind of like it's really cool. Now Now I can be like, hey, all the admin stuff, I really don't want to do that anymore. Like, I just want to make packaging tweaks when new flavors come out, like create the designs for them and work with the designers and create cool marketing campaigns with my team. And that's what I like to do.
That's awesome. When a brand does get acquired, you'd kind of imagine the team is a little bit apprehensive. What happens to me, Max? How was your communication with the team and how they take that?
Yeah, that was a tricky one. So when the acquisition happened, I didn't know. It was like, okay, like who do I talk to this about, like within my team, right? Yeah. So during the acquisition, I actually only one person on my team, Mona, who's been kind of like my right hands for a long time. She's like my day one Sour Strips employee, but also like my day one employee for my Ever Forward clothing. Like, she's been with me for a long time. You know, every like weird idea I have, you know, she would help me execute that. So she moved from Virginia to Texas and started a life in Texas. Now she lives in Hawaii and remote. She's living the real dream. She works remotely from Hawaii on the beach and is like setting up like vendor and like distribution. Like it's wild. If you met Mona, you wouldn't be like, you're a you're a wizard at setting up McLean vendor item setup. Like, so she was like the documentation person in the company, where basically it's like, hey, if we need this vendor set up, this item set up, this insurance set up, like, hey, Mona, like, you tackle all of this. So she had the knowledge of all that. So I knew that I would just be asking every second for like some sort of document, and she'd be like, why are you asking me for like all these documents? So right when we started the due diligence, I was like, okay, hey, Mona, I called her, and because I even told her, I was like, hey, I'm going to this Hershey meeting. She's just like, I was always open communicating with her about everything in the company. So when I was having these meetings, I was like talking to her about it. And then when we started the due diligence, I was like, hey, I think they're like interested in acquiring the company. I was like, I need you to help me like tag team this this due diligence project. And I decided to not tell everyone else in the company, because it's one thing, first of all, you don't want to mess up the culture, right? Yeah. Because you also, the last thing I wanted to happen, I was like, I'd rather myself and Mona can handle if we go through all of this, and she's wondering what's the future going to hold for her, me as well, and then it doesn't happen, how that's going to shift the the vibe at work, right? But if I told the whole company about, or even just a bunch of my employees, like, and it was a struggle, I didn't know what the right thing to do was. Maybe there's not a right answer. I didn't want them to be stressed out, then the deal not go through, and then them wonder, is he just looking to sell it at all times? Like, what is my job security? Like, what are all these things? So I only had communication with Mona throughout the entire time. And then once the sale was super finalized, and I was very key, I was like, hey, I'm not telling anyone else until like it's done, because I can't have it fall through and me tell them, and then that changed the dynamic at work. So when it sold, I basically pulled all my key employees and had a meeting with all of them, and disclosed it to them. And just like you'd probably imagine, they were like, what? Like, yeah, like what? Like, and they were kind of like, the reaction at first, so I did with them, and then about 20 minutes later after that, after I had some one-on-ones, then I had a company-wide meeting and told the 20 people that work at the brand. And the reactions are probably what you imagined at first. It wasn't like, woo! It wasn't like, hell yeah, man. No, it was like,
what's this mean?
Yeah, what? Like what? Like what? Like do we have jobs? Like what does this mean? And it's a really finicky position to be in, because I can basically try to like predict what the future will be, try to predict how the transition will be, but the future is always unknown, and it's been unknown even with me just running the company, right? But I basically was like, look, like, we're in really good hands. Like, Hershey doesn't want to screw up what we have going on here. And once I kind of like explained to them kind of like why I did it and the struggles, as hey, they only see X, Y, and Z in the business, right? They don't see maybe they don't care about what I'm having to deal with on the outside of things. But I was like, guys, like, there's a difference of scaling a business from 0 to 5, 0 to 10, 0 to 20, 0 to 50 to 100 million, to 150 million, and the people you have to bring in, and like the company has to get structured, and you have to bring in outside expertise, and I was just like, if now we can do all these things with the power of like this Hershey behind us, and we're able to like scale at a dramatic more pace, and like I said, Hershey they don't want to like disrupt the world we have going on, because they're like, hey, it's been working for so long, like, y'all do you, we just want to help. We want to scale the brand into infinity. And so it was a tough day for sure. Yeah. I can't dive super deep into it, but I knew from the moment that if I ever sold the company, I would do right by every single person that works in my company, whether you've been there for a week or you've been with me for a long time. I took care of my employees, and that's like the one thing, being the face of social media, it was kind of like one of those things that everyone was like, man, you sold a company, you better help this person, you better have done this. I'm like, guys, when have I done anything besides shown that I'm like a good guy, or like, like I'm not like, yeah, give me the money, like, screw y'all, right? While it is definitely a bittersweet, the sale was able to change more lives than just myself. I'll leave it at that. And like, so that's it was something that I was very adamant about doing immediately after the sale, and it was a really cool feeling. And there's a lot of emotions going, and it all ended in happy tears. And now after then, Hershey people came down. You know, they met with all the team, and that kind of like eased everyone. And you know, it's hard to know what people are feeling, but I've stressed with Hershey how important the team is and how I want to keep the team as the team for as long as we can. And, you know, I don't know what the future holds, but that's kind of, you know, the world.
It's not funny you mentioned the social media piece, because I remember like when you guys had announced it, I think the first thing Twitter and every platform was doing was like started guessing numbers, right?
Yeah.
It has to be 100 million. Someone said 75 million. Someone said 500 million. People were just guessing numbers. From what you can share, and obviously Hershey's a public company, so this is it gets released, right?
Yeah, it got released.
So it got released. But from what you can share, from the economics of it, like what did you have to scale to? What did you end up selling for? Whatever you can share would be awesome to also understand. And was it up to your expectations? Like, you know, when you kind of started to get into that deal structure?
Yeah, so that's like an interesting like thing to think about, because so whenever I got asked like, hey, would you sell it? Would you sell it? How much would you sell? You know, I'd have talks with like my friends and stuff like, oh, would you ever sell it? And when it started from like year 1, year 2, so we sold it right after. So our 5th birthday was September 9th again, and I started the conversation on September 11th. So it was basically we just turned 5, basically when the company was sold. You know, 2 months after that. And every year, whenever someone would ask me like, hey, well, how much you sell it for? Like my number each year would go up of like this like threshold. Like I wouldn't sell it for anything less than this because of, you know, me knowing just the cash flow and the revenue. I'm kind of like, why would I sell it for this? Because we're profitable, and you know, I'm gonna make close to this anyway. So it's like, well, I'm not gonna, you know, do that. So yeah, so the company got sold for $75.5 million, and that was a number that it was like right in line of what I expected the company to like honestly get sold for. And I think everyone has these like big moonshot like missions, and there's some more details to the deal that I can't really disclose, that it's to my best interest to continue to see the company scale, right, during this transitional period. And I think a lot of people like think that you have to hit these like super specific numbers to hit these exits, and I had talked with some people that were saying that, you know, hey, companies you're not even you know, you hit $10 million in revenue and you're thinking you're on top of the world, but like you're a blip on the radar to like these bigger brands. And I had heard all different numbers, whether it be you need to hit at least 10 million, you need to hit 50 million, 100 million before anyone will take you seriously. And I think with Sour Strips, it's really unique. So before we sold the company, in the final year, we did over $30 million with the company. That, you know, I'd always been public with like talking about scaling. So we did like 8.5, then we did like 16.5, then we did like 25, then we broke over 30 before I sold it. So which not only am I super proud that myself and my team were able to do these numbers with like the size of the team we are, but with a company like this, it's not just about like your like a multiple of your EBITDA or things like that. It's like you look at this as it's hard to put a super true value on this, because okay, yeah, you're profitable, all these things, like here's what you did, here's what maybe a multiple of whether it be your revenue or your bottom line would be, but how do you calculate like the true value of a brand that's scaling like this, that the runway is so drastic? Because if you were to buy it last year versus this, you know, in 2023 versus 2024, the price would be different, right? If you were to buy 2025, like we're going to continue to scale. So the deal was structured in a way that was the amount of the 75.5 was basically this like base amount of what the company was valued at the moment of in that time, and then there's some incentives for me as the owner for the brand to continue to scale over the next couple of years. So that'll be something that, because it's like they couldn't put this like future value on the company at the current pace, but it's like kind of like, hey, we have this client coming next year, and you know, and just as if you look at the past as a great data point where, hey, if we've done X, Y, and Z over the past couple of years, like next year we're planning on scaling again and planning on scaling again. So you need to kind of almost like bake in what the future of the brand can be, and also how much like they can, pour fire on it. Because if we're in 30,000 doors, right, and there's a little under probably 300,000 total doors you could get in with a product like this, we're only scratching the surface of like what you can do. So like the runway is very vast, and it really also helps that we started with the Targets and the Walmarts and the HEB, and it's almost then a trickle down, from there. Like you get into these mammoths, and then ideally it's all the other companies are going to be like, hey, we want to have this in there too. It's not like you're fighting to get to the bigger players. You kind of started with the bigger players, so it's this really unique kind of situation.
Chew on This is sponsored by, if you want to build a profitable e-com brand these days, then you need retention. Lifetime value is the lifeblood of your brand, especially when CACs keep going up. Being first purchase profitable is great, but you only really start to print money when that customer comes back over and over and over again. It's why subscriptions are such a big piece of our strategy here at Obvi. There's a big reason brands, no matter the size, are using a tool like Recharge. What we like is that they're not just adding a subscribe button on your site, they're a complete subscription engine, helping you convert buyers to subscribers, preventing cancellations, winning back churn customers, and they're even driving more revenue through smart upsells. That's why big brands such as Dr. Squatch and even Vital Proteins are using Recharge. So if you're looking for a powerful, all-in-one subscription platform, head over to Get Recharge today to see how you can pump up your LTV for your brand. Now, let's get back to the episode.
The one thing that you mentioned earlier was, I wanted to sell to Hershey because I think that they're looking for their sour candy.
Yep.
Right? What was the conversation you had with them that they had told you, like, this is why we see this as an opportunity for us, and here's what we can do for the brand? What was like their expectation of, okay, after we acquire this, what did they want to do with it?
Yeah, that was like a comment that I would ask during it. It's kind of like, why do you want this brand, right? Because that was important to me. And it wasn't just like, cool, where do I sign? It was like, hey, like, why do y'all want this? Mm-hmm. And they said exactly what I thought is like, hey, they're crushing it in chocolate, obviously, but their sweets and salty category is something that they're currently expanding with. They bought, it was like they kind of dominated the popcorn category, right? And then they bought like One Bars, and they got into the protein space, and they've bought some better for you gummies as well, and so all of their stuff, but their core is like their sugar portfolio, right? And even they were like, hey, Twizzlers and Jolly Rancher, iconic brands that are just, been around for a long time, going to continue to be around for a long time. But, when you think of like Jolly Rancher or Twizzler, you don't think of them as a sour brand. You think of them as their, Jolly Rancher is like their flavors, and they're, iconic, iconic, all the different flavors and the hard candy. And then they expanded, and they have sours and they have gummies, and Twizzlers has a million different variations. But they're extensions of a core brand into a sour category. It's not a true sour brand that is like, that's their heavy hitter. So they basically reiterated like what I said, what I thought about their interest was saying like, hey, we're looking to continue to expand our sweets category, sweets and salty sweets specifically for this. And hey, we don't really have a dominating kind of like sour player in the game, and we love what you've done, and we also like love what you've done with like the social media aspect of it. And we think we can continue to scale this like the same direction that you've gone, just at a faster pace and in a bigger way. So it was kind of like the writing was on the wall. I mean, there's a lot of other big players, but you know all their brands, right? You know all their sour key components. And while it also maybe would have been cool to have a bunch of people reach out right at the same time and be like, oh, I could go alongside this other candy brand. I just felt like Hershey was such the right move, because I was like, if anyone's gonna like really make sure that this brand succeeds, it's gonna be them, because they want to get in this space. The like writing was on the wall of like how quickly they could expand it. And in the, let's see, officially sold in November, and just within this year, I mean, we have just so many new key accounts that we're going into. I mean, we'll add like stores like by the thousands, by maybe even like, no, yeah, it'd be like well in like early, like low tens of thousands of just like in the second half of the year.
Wow.
I mean, just, and it was wild. Like we were already expanding so quickly, but I've had so many of these like calls with, the Hershey team who represents this client, and the Hershey team that all they do is this client and this client and this client. I have all these meetings, and just like I thought is with Sour Strips, it was always like, okay, we're in all these stores, all the other stores, it's just a waiting game. I didn't have like a sales team, right? Like I knew that, hey, you crush in Target, all the other grocery chains are going to see this data, or all the candy buyers, like I know they walk around and see what other stores are having. I was like, it's only kind of a matter of time, and it's been working out for us. But when we sold to Hershey, I was like, what's going to happen is the brands who were like knew about us but hadn't made a decision are like, oh, this is a Hershey brand now. We need to get them in there. And it's basically been like this like rapid fire where now just left and right, and just the expansions are beyond what I imagined it to be. And this is like just warming up in the first year of the acquisition. And we're scaling up to, be an even crazier 2026. I mean, I go to Sweets and Snacks next week, and, have like, it'll be like the first expo I go to, and like my schedule's entirely full of like meetings with all these different retailers. And I'm like, man, I am official now. It's wild, man.
No, it's really cool to see that. Like, I feel like a lot of the outside looking in perspective is like you get acquired, and it is that like super. It's that power pack. It's that jet pack that you get of like, hey, like. And I'm curious, is it really like that, where it's like, all right, they just get on calls, and like you now have meetings with like things that would sometimes take months to even find out and see if you're going to get in front of a buyer.
Yeah, I
mean,
mean,
is it like just you kind of shortcut through all that now?
I'd say kind of, because I don't know this for sure, but I would think that, especially we've been going for over 5 years, I think any candy buyer who is probably properly doing their job of analyzing the market should know that we exist. Yeah. Like, I would be dumbfounded, and I don't know if I'm being like ignorant of like how, or maybe like, oh yeah, we're so cool, but like, I mean, if you're a candy buyer, because it kind of like when we went into HEB, right? HEB was someone where we got into like 5 locations the first like week, right? And then what happened was every store owner or every candy category leader of each store started seeing the data of these 5 stores are in. They're like, oh, they're selling well. Like, I want it in my store. And then it was like the regional buyers for like, they have like 10 stores they control. And then it was like, we want it. And when we got to HEB, it was, I mean, Mona can tell you, it was like, we would have these days where I'd be like, oh, another HEB. And like 10 minutes later, like another HEB emailed us. Like we would get like 10, 15 in a day, and it was just like nonstop because everyone would see the data.
Drop off, I remember videos of you.
Oh yeah, I'd stock it. I went in the back, and they're like old system. I'm like loading in the docks. I'm like knocking on the thing, loading. I wanted to learn all of it. So in my head, I was like, oh, that's what's basically happened. We went with Target and Walmart, and then we started getting approached by all these other retailers. And I'm assuming that if you're a candy buyer and you're analyzing the market, which I'm assuming they do, because they want to do the best in their category. I'm sure that's how they make bonuses and how they make, scale. They want the company to do great, but they also want to look great at what they do. And, it's kind of like the Target buyer that took a chance on us to bring it in. I'm sure their upper management was like, great job, like bringing in Sour Strips, because they brought so much revenue to Target, right? So in my mind, it was like just like a waiting game that I knew was going to happen. So with the Hershey, it's a little different because they literally have like 2 to 6 people that like are for like every like account, or even sometimes even more of that. So they're already having all these meetings, right? And so they can just quickly drop of like, hey, this is, here's another brand a brand we acquired, and they're like, oh, I've heard about them. And just, we've been able to like, I don't want to say pull strings, but it's, there's some retailers that I got like calls right when I landed yesterday in New York of like, hey, their reset isn't until like March or April of next year, but they actually want to like pull you in early in like 4 weeks. And it's like, okay, like and it's crazy. So I think it's like Sour Strips would have continued to grow and continued. I think we would have been a dominant player in the space regardless. But now it solidifies. And, selling the company is like, a lot of people are like, why didn't you just keep building it? But it's a lot easier for like founders to like understand of like the world doesn't see the stresses and like the what ifs and like be like, hey, all it takes is, you know, if all your eggs in this basket of this account, like if, and then more competitors come in the space and copycats start coming, and like there's so many what ifs, and you're dealing with all this. Whereas when you get acquired, especially by a strategic one like Hershey, it almost kind of like concretes you in, and now you're like, okay, you're playing on a different level. And with Sour Strips, like I wanted it, like I said, to change my life, and I wanted it to be a brand that like was around forever. And I think I was able to achieve all of those things. And I'm super proud of what myself and my team have done over the past 5 years, where, you know, I started Sour Strips like pretty early on in like the CPG boom and the influencer world. And I'm proud that I was this smaller influencer that went into this space against the giants and became one of the most successful ones. And I'm proud that I also like I did this with my team. It wasn't like this, I'm the face of it, I make these goofy videos and then I just have like a meeting once a week. It's like I still make my goofy videos, and I'm proud that I built this whole thing and continued to make the content in the same way, and I was able to document it. That's why, you know, if people had opinions of me now, I'd be like, go back 5 years. I'll show you when I launched the brand, and watch every video from the past 5 years, and you'll see exactly what I did to build this brand. And I was in it. I mean, I was stocking the shelves. I was installing racks at my warehouse. Like I was touring the warehouses to figure out which space I needed. I was the one making all these decisions. I didn't have anyone else making decisions for me, deciding what was the best move for the company. Every decision in the brand's like history was because I was like, I think this is the best thing to do for the company.
I love the way you talk about it. It's just like one big art project for you.
Yeah. Well, that's why it was. I feel like I almost had this like cheat code, because, like I said, like it's like I built a candy brand for candy lovers, but it was built by a candy lover, right? And I think that's like this cheat code that a lot of people don't have.
Yeah.
I'm curious. You're obviously, you know, two pieces here. One is I think the world you live in is also having a moment with Ghost, also having an acquisition. You see Poppy recently. You know, Texas is also a breeding ground, right? I mean, you have the Blooms of the world, Super Coffees of the world. It's incredible to see brands grow. What do you kind of get to also see with the exposure you have within your own circle and how important that network is? Because I feel like the other piece to this is like you have incredible brands that are building, but they don't have a network that kind of accelerates the learning of like who to talk to, or maybe even who to be like, hey, I'm just gonna like run this idea by, or run this, like you talked about, like, hey, with your friends you talk about what's the number you'd sell at, this and that. Like how important or did that play a part at all, which is having that network, having that exposure, being able to, you know, even work with someone on the Ghost side with Dan and Ryan. They're like, are those good pieces that kind of helped accelerate some of the thought processes? And if not, just curious, like how do you look at kind of the climate for CPG as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, firstly, with the huge congrats to Ghost, it was so, when that came out, I didn't know anything about that.
Wow.
I didn't get like, which I guess obviously I shouldn't have, but like when it announced, I was like, what? And because I was like balls deep in my acquisition at the time, and I hadn't talked to them. And
I figured timing wise.
yeah, and I remember like, I mean, when I called them, I was like, hey guys, congrats on the sale. By the way, tomorrow you might see something very similar. And they're like, what? Like, and it was just this crazy full circle moment that like I've been with Ghost since day one.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was in Australia with them, we were like walking to the gym across like the water, and I remember like telling them about this idea I had to start Sour Strips, and they're like, oh, that's cool, man. And they're like one day we should like do a collab together, and like, you know, if it blows up, we should like do a collab together. And I was like, that'd be cool. And like just this full circle of like, then everyone got acquired kind of the same time. And then I'm even friends with the owner, or the owners of Alani. So like Katie and Hayden.
Too.
So it's just like all this happening at the same time was like almost wild to see, like all the people you know and everyone getting acquired at the same time. But the relationships were key. I mean, I would have, if I had never, I think a lot of it, it's like the people you surround yourself with, but it's like also the people you put yourself around, right? Like if I had never decided to move to Texas to go more into like the social media thing because of my buddies like Christian and everyone that's been at, in Texas, like Alpha Elite, that would have, my life would have been completely different. I would have never met my wife. I would have never started, who knows, I would have started Sour Strips. And even Christian's getting into 3D energy drinks.
Yep. Yeah,
he's
relaunching, right?
Yeah, that was he's relaunching it real soon. Like, I know he's doing the whole rebrand. But him starting 3D was the aha moment for me to go, man, there's a guy who, because I was like, when you're in fitness, you do clothing. That's what you do. Okay, you do bicep curls and you make clothing. That's like what you have to do. When he did the 3D, I was like, man, okay, he's the energy drink guy, and then okay, he gets every time we're at expos talking for people for 8 hours. Like everyone brings him energy drinks, everyone brings me candy. I'm the candy guy. Like in my videos, I'm known for loving sour candy, and I was like, what if I started a candy brand? So he like inspired me to do that, and cool. The people you're around is so important. I even remember like the weeks before I even launched the brand, I had the original logo. The Sour Strips was like shifted a little bit over, and there was a bunch of like dead space. There's like white in between it, and I was like, hey Christian, wait, like dude, the box looks sick. He's like, I think you should tweak the logo. I was like, no, I'm talking about the box, man. I'm not asking your opinion on the logo. Like, no, the logo's like, it's all fine. I was like, what if you did, like, I think you should just like fill this gap. I was like, all right, let me go look at the computer. And then I readjusted it, and like it changed in a such better way. And even, early on, I was inspired by all the guys at Ghost and like seeing what they've done. And there's a lot of brand elements that I pulled just from like, I love the direction that they took, and being kind of like the edgier kind of like energy drink brand. And it was just this cool full circle thing to be surrounded by so many people just doing dope shit. And the network it's like grown so much. It's kind of like when I was doing YouTube and clothing, and I was successful at making videos in respects to like, not comparison to maybe a lot of other clothing brands, but like with Everford, I was really proud of like what I was able to build it up to. And I remember like always I'd go to like events, and everyone would always be talking to people who are like really, really successful. No one ever talked to me about like the clothing, or they'd be like, oh yeah, cool videos, man. But I wasn't like the business guy, right? And it was so wild when I started Sour Strips, and when it started really taking off, just the amount of people that like all of a sudden I almost like gained all of this respect. They're like, Sour Strips. Yeah. Like that was like the business candy guy. And then now that I've sold it, like I get like just DMs from all these people, and I was like, man, I've been cool this whole time, guys. Like I didn't have to sell the company to do all this, but now it's, I mean, I guess I've put in the reps, I guess, of building this brand, and then exiting is something that not a ton of people do, and so it's been an interesting dynamic of now how the conversations. So when people talk to me, because I look at myself as this, and my wife will always like rag on me for it because she hypes me up, but I'd downplay. I'm just like, I'm a goofy guy, made a candy brand, I make my weird videos, I try to be funny all the time. And then Taylor's like, Max, like what you built is crazy. She's like this idea, I know it's, I was like, yeah, but I just really like candy, and I made the cool thing. And she's like, no, like you built this company that like people don't do this. Like this is like crazy what you've built. I'm like, I mean, I guess, but like, but it's like hard. I have this like imposter syndrome of like, I'm like, oh, I know all the work that went into it, but I'm just like, well, that's just what I had to do to get it to this point. It wasn't like I didn't look. And I look at a lot of other like business people online, and I'm always like, I'm not like that person. Like I don't like carry myself and talk like that. I'm like, do I need to start doing that to be like, perceived as a business like success in the world? And I don't know. I like to show people that like you can just be passionate about what you're doing, and hopefully you find success because you're just passionate about the things that you're creating. And now it's quite a different landscape. But I know I went kind of all over the place on that, but I absolutely think that the people around you and the people you connect with are like just like so crucial. I mean, I even remember and a lot of times you also have to like like blur out a lot of the noise, because I had people when I started the brand that were, I actually talked with like the people at like Congo who are half owners of like Alani, right? And Prime and all that. And I remember talking to Trey on the phone and had this like idea about sour strips, and he's like, and he's a business wizard, right? I mean, clearly he's done all these brands. And I remember telling him about this like idea and stuff, and he's like, well, distributors need to hit this margin, and so you need to make the candy for this price, and you have to sell it this price. And I was like, damn, that's way cheaper than I can actually do it for. I was like, I'm gonna have to sell it for like this. He's like, it's not gonna work, man. Like it's like you have to sell. You're gonna have to have like super low margin. Like you have to do X, Y, and Z. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna try it anyway. And I was like, he's like, you have to sell it at this price. You have to make it this price. I was like, I can't. So I'm just gonna try it. I'm just gonna try to do this. And we ended up like, I talk a lot about how sour strips kind of like, created this like premium category in the space where, I had to sell it for more money than other brands because I couldn't compete on price, or else I would never been able to scale the company. We've been profitable since day one, but we only continued to get more profitable as we had like economies of scale and as we were doing that. But it took like, again, we were always making money, but for the first like 1 to 3 years, I mean, I was not balling out. Like like cash was coming in, but it wasn't flowing. It was as soon as it was out, it was in and out. Like counts got low, and but again, my employees don't see all that. But I was just thinking of like, okay, I'm the candy lover. Would I pay an extra $1 for what I think is a better candy? Even if when I was back in college, maybe I wasn't, I was budgeting my money a little bit. I was like, would I pay an extra $1 for an extra candy? I think I would. Yeah. So I think a lot of people would too. Mm-hmm. Like, and we're not gonna be for everyone, but I think we can sell a lot of candy and be more expensive. And it wasn't this like tactic I had. It was just like, I couldn't sell it for cheaper. Like I couldn't do it. Like I wouldn't have been able to scale the brand. I wouldn't have been able to hire a team. I wouldn't have been able to go into retail. And just the history, it's a wild story, man.
I know we're gonna wrap up soon. I have one question, just from the lens of like, you look at the day after the wire hits, right? And like, besides getting dude a private flight, which was sick. What's financial freedom really look like now? Like I know there's this overarching blanket you can throw, which is like, my family's fine, I have generational wealth, blah blah blah. But like, what is the next day, right? Like, how is it just like, is the ability to buy anything and go do anything really, is that feeling actually different from what you thought it would be? How's like the moment post that day of
well, I mean, right after I sold, I put an order for 3 Bugattis. Obviously, it's like Mr. Deeds when he gets everyone, Corvettes. It's like I got everyone at Alphaland Bugattis. No, and like I know you joked about the dude in the private jet, but that was the first. As soon as I sold, I was like, my friends are everyone always can't go to this trip or that trip. I was like, I want to do a sick trip snowboarding. I want to go to Vail. I want to get a private jet. So all my friends, like, and I'll do it cool. I'll take my dog. So I was like, so I was texting all my friends. I was like, look, I'm getting a plane. I'm getting a dope spot. You all just have to show up. Like, I want you to come and enjoy this. So that was like super cool that I got to do that.
That's awesome.
Outside of all the taking care of everyone, like kind of around me and like the security, it's interesting. I was doing well before the acquisition, right, and I still was like not like balling out maybe as much as I could have balled out. When I would look at like the internet and be like, man, these guys are either have 700 times more money than me, or they're just very poor with their money. Like I was like, cause I ain't buying an ounce of like what these people are buying. And I was like, and I think I'm doing really, really well. Like I see my bank account. So I've always been someone who's like been, I think, frugal in certain aspects, and then I like on things that I really care about, you kind of go lavish on, right? And for me, it's kind of experiences, and money is an interesting thing. It's an interesting topic. I'm obsessed with learning and talking about money, but I know it's like you have to do it in kind of a way. Like I don't want to come off any type of way. I look at like financial freedom as you can do the things you want to do, and you don't have to stress about like the pricing of it. And even like the day to day, I joke with my wife all the time. I was like, you know what I think luxury is? I was like, when I open my fridge and I have like all the energy, like the protein drinks that I want, all the snacks that I want, like stocked up, that when I was like in college, like there's no way I could have like, oh, I need to get one protein bar at a time. Now I buy 5 boxes and I can have one of each of the flavor and I can pick which one I want. I was like, that's luxury to me. But no, I mean, I think money just kind of amplifies the person that you are. And I think if you're a doucher when you don't have money, and you're gonna be a doucher when you have a bunch of money, right? And so I think now I just want to do cool stuff. I mean, we're building a really cool house. That'll be something that I'm spending this money on. Will be this house that is like, but I'm like doing it because I'm like, I want to have these experiences for the life that I want to live in 5 to 10 years with my family and my kids, and have, all the parties there. And so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I haven't really bought anything. I bought a truck. I bought a Raptor. I bought a Raptor R. So that's super cool. And then, I've been losing a bunch of money in the stock market. So that's fun. So, but other than that, it's kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, let's go.
I love what you said. Money amplifies who you are.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, like, I was annoying before money, and I'm definitely annoying with the post sale money.
I mean, you've done what everybody aims to do. So congratulations on that. One thing that you want viewers and listeners to take back, and I don't know if it's, implement in their business, or maybe it's just like changing the way that they think about things. What would be one thing you want to leave the viewers with?
I always love the like paralysis by analysis type of thing. Is like throughout my entire journey of sour strips, like I said, with like the call about the pricing, and you should take advice from a lot of places, maybe from a lot of people who know the space, know what they're into, but you shouldn't take every piece of advice as to like, this is concrete what you have to do. And throughout the history of sour strips, there's probably a ton of decisions that I made that people with a whole lot of experience would have been like, I would have never done that. I would have never done that. But every decision led me to this moment in time. And I think you have to just trust your gut more than you maybe think. And I think a lot of people will analyze data and reports and all this. But I think at the end of the day, a lot of sour strips was built, and the successes were built on decisions that I made of just, I think we should do this. Like, I think this is the move. It wasn't about what does it cost? What is the profit of this going to be? What is the ROI on this? It was like, I think either whether this would be cool, or this is something that I really want to do, or I think this will work. And I think the more and more you trust your gut, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Chew on that.
Damn.
Chew on that.
Great. That was insane, man.
That was
Wow.
really good.
If you want more from us, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, follow us on TikTok, and check out the website chewonthis.io.